missing someone.
This week on the EchoCast, we're going to talk about updates with stuff, state of the game recap, a little bit of Division news, a little speculation piece on the Division map, a question from a lovely dev, and that's about it. So, well, let's just jump right on into it, huh? The first thing I'll talk about is some content updates. The main one I have is a Division 2 community map. I will post links to the map, and I will also post a link to my Discord where we can discuss it, throw out ideas, and all of that fun stuff. Essentially what I'm doing is I've created a private map in Google Maps, and to the best of my ability figured out the boundaries of what we've seen so far in Division 2 in Washington DC, and mapped out missions that I think are kind of confirmed, some district boundaries that are kind of confirmed, and basically it's just going to be a place to implement facts that we find out and to speculate a bit. Actually, in the speculation part of the podcast today, I'm gonna focus on that a bit and take a peek and kind of go on that just a little bit. So the second thing I have is talking about the survival tournament. So Splinter Shield, F Shep, and some other lovely people put together a PC and PlayStation 4 survival tournament in the Division, and I was lucky enough to participate in the most recent one, which was for the Xbox. The Xbox was so popular that there's actually a second tournament the following weekend. So the week that you're hearing this, more than likely, is going to be the week of the second tournament. So my experience with it, I did really poorly. We actually ended up running 3 times. The first one, I think we got, I would say, roughly halfway through, and a stream sniper stumbled in and kind of ruined it by, I think they killed 4 or 5 of the people who were competing. It's not a problem to have other people in there while we're competing. It's a natural hazard, right? But when someone's pretty obviously watching the people's streams who are playing, tracking them down and then getting the jump on them unfairly, it makes it not a fun experience. There was also some weird complaints about that round not counting for points for anyone, because there were people who had done well in that round, and for anyone who maybe gets into that in the future, and maybe these people didn't pay attention to the rules, but that process was outlined, so everyone knew when we restarted that your points were gone. They didn't count. So it was just kind of weird to see some complaints and some moaning and groaning about that, because when you entered, you knew that was the case. So if you didn't like that, you didn't have to play. But it's just kind of weird, but it was still really fun. I in the first run actually made it. I ran up to the tunnel that goes from General Assembly all the way over to the DZ, and I was gonna just run through that and gear up, and then by the time I got there, it was gonna be fairly close to the 30-minute limit that you have to get to the DZ. Unfortunately, about 2/3 of the way through, I did have a nice little loadout, but unfortunately some purples were there, and I was far too aggressive with them. So my advice is that I didn't even do that well, and I still had a lot of fun. I was out very early in the 2 rounds that counted, mostly by not just playing my game and by trying to do stuff different than I was used to. My advice is that if you are thinking about participating, well, definitely do it. It is a blast. It's a ton of fun. Also, make sure you practice a little bit, get somewhat familiar, But if you think that you're just going to go in and die immediately, I still suggest if there's an open spot and Splinter Shield's asking for people to fill spots at the end, do it. There's literally, it literally can't hurt anything. Worst case scenario, you'll meet some new people, even if you get out early, the way I did. Best case scenario, you might surprise yourself and you might be able to do something kind of cool. My last bit of advice is that if you do it, please, for heaven's sake, figure out a way to record or stream and make sure it works before the event starts. And when the event starts, leave the darn Discord to coordination of the event and not pictures. And good Lord, I had some eye rolls probably if you go back and watch the stream, because people were just being a little silly. But again, super fun. Definitely do it if you get a chance. And if you don't want to do it, I at least suggest checking it out and watching along with Splinter Shield or whoever's streaming and participating. The last bit of the content update is the Words with Bond. I've been talking about for a minute. There is, I believe, 10 that I'm working on. Community members, developers, CMs, all kinds of different people. I've got people that you know of and people that you probably don't. There's a few devs and so on that seem to kind of enjoy some quietness, some not everyone following them and looking at every post they make. And I think I've drug a few of them into it. So I'm definitely really excited to bring that to you guys, and I think it's going to be really nice. So state of the game recap. So we have a new shield. The new shield is the first one out of the last two that you have to earn it, obviously. But I think a lot of the people who have been playing for a while will already have it. It only requires a 3,000 commendation score. I say only, that's a lot, especially for people who started playing recently or who left for a long time and came back. What I will say is that there are some guides and stuff, I believe, on Reddit. There's some guides and things like that on Reddit that will give you some hints and maybe point out some easy commendations that you can get, and you can go that way. You can also check out a video made by or Taylor, and I will link that below, and you should be able to see that somewhere in the comments, however you're seeing this podcast or listening to it. They talked about a free weekend for PC. If you're listening to this, it's probably over already. But if you're on console, it's going to be the following weekend. And if you have any friends or anything like that, I assume if you're listening, you already play the game. But if you have any friends, if you have anyone that you know is interested in Division 2 or wants to play the first one that never did, it's a good opportunity to get them in there, and more than likely it will be followed by a severe discount on the game. So keep an eye out, do things. The last thing, and what I thought was probably the coolest thing, was that they had talked a bit about the roadmap moving forward. If you remember, the year 3 roadmap that they put out at the beginning of the year ends in September. So I think myself and other people have been waiting to see if they were going to update it, if it was just kind of going to be flying by the seat of our pants until Division 2 releases. Well, we have our answer. So what they're going to do is at the beginning of every month, they're going to release a monthly roadmap. And when they do that, it's going to include things like when state of the game will happen. It's going to talk about where the Division 2 can be played at various conferences. It seems like in September it's going to be in a lot of places, various different game gatherings and conventions and things like that. And they're also going to announce anything extra. And the one thing extra this month I've noticed is that I believe on the 27th, there's going to be a dev blog. If you go back and look at the dev blogs from Division 1, they were a pretty good spot for them to reveal fairly significant amounts of information on Division 1. So I suspect this will be the first example of probably showing us, or more fully fleshing out, some of the new game mechanics, some of the new game systems and things like that. So I highly suggest keeping an eye out for that. I bet it's going to be pretty cool. The last thing they showed was some cool cosplay from Gamescom. Area the Fox was in there, and a few other of the well-known people. Is really, really cool. So that was State of the Game. You may have caught some other stuff, but that's what I have. So the next part is Division 2 news. So there wasn't really much. State of the Game tends to kind of wrap up any news. The main thing I would actually throw out there is that if you don't watch the Friday State of the Games, not State of the Games, but the Friday streams with Ubi Amper, or Amper Camper, who is the CM in North Carolina for the game. He does Friday streams, or he typically plays with people in the community, just kind of chills out. And Amper is a very lovely individual. And I know people watch to hang out with him and play with him and talk to him. There's also a lot of people who watch because they hope that Terry Spear is going to make an appearance. Because as we all know, Terry Spear is like a 6-year-old child with a secret, who knows he can't tell anyone the secret, but he really, really, really wants to. So I'm not going to do a segment on the things that he talked about. He's a very smart, experienced individual in the industry. He was obviously well versed and smart enough to know what he can and can't say. I will say that if you're like me and you enjoy getting every itty bitty little detail about what could be coming in Division 2, I would go back and about halfway through the Friday stream, watch the VOD when Terry comes on. And he doesn't answer a lot of questions in great detail because he can't. But he does give some hint, wink, winks to some questions people ask. Some stuff that I think is at least interesting to know. Again, I don't think he, and I am very confident that he's smart enough not to tell us anything we're not supposed to know or can't know. But and especially if you haven't paid a lot of attention to all the real tiny stuff. If you kind of just look over the broad or the widely known stuff, it's worth checking it out. So go to the Division Twitch page, watch the last VOD from Friday, and about halfway through Terry comes on and has some really good conversation. He also has a nice conversation about the difference between balancing and nerfing and things like that, and you kind of get some idea of a change in philosophy a little bit from Division 1 and stuff like that. So check it out. So for the speculation piece, so as I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, I have been working on a map. And that map is of Washington, D.C. Now, I think some other people have done something similar. The big difference is I'm doing it in a way that people can watch my progress, give their opinions. I may open it up to allow other people to edit at some point. That's not really my style. I am a bit of a control freak in a lot of ways, but I think it's a neat project. And what's so cool about it is, at this point, I'm extremely confident about the boundaries of the play area when the game comes out that I've figured out. Obviously that could change, but using the demo, especially the PAX one with Keith from Red Storm, it showed a pretty good image of the current outline when the game releases. obviously that can change with DLCs and things like that. It may even change between now and the release of the game. What was really cool about it is that there are about 7 markers on that map that he showed us that seem to indicate mission locations. And so I have those on the map, and I have them marked a certain way. Another neat thing is that when he was scrolling around the map showing stuff, there were about 3 or 4 districts that were outlined, named, and showed the level of those areas. Now, I can't remember exactly from when Division 1 came out, but I can't remember if the levels of each area describe the level of the enemies that you're going to fight, or if they describe the level that you should be. I believe it's the enemies, as I was corrected when I thought I made some breaking finding. But and I have that on the map. So if you click on the different zones, if you know in the legend on the left, you can see I've got there were 4 zones that the levels were shown, and then there were a bunch of boundaries within the map that I found and mapped out and split the map into districts that weren't named. They probably aren't complete, you know. I'm assuming this map's going to change a lot before release, but and then I would say the northern, northwestern, and eastern parts of the map that you can see are, in my opinion, extremely accurate. I think that they're pretty good, at least from what we've seen. The south and southwestern part of the map, I just guessed, and that's why they look so much different. Because they did hover over those areas, but they just weren't broken up. So I don't know if they won't be broken up, and I don't know if it's going to change. I'm not sure. It seems like that may be up in the air or maybe treated differently. The big thing was that the DZ, we've seen a piece of the map, and I actually do have that marked on the map. You can see it. It's easier to see in the legend and click on it, but it's near the capital reflecting pool, and that's the part of the wall we saw in the demo. But honestly, from looking at some of the footage from the demos and stuff, I have no idea where that wall goes. Because even trying to look and seeing off in the distance, it looks like it just goes down the street, which does follow one of the district wall like separations, but it like doesn't make sense. So I'm not sure. The DZ to me is a complete mystery. For a short time, I had like a speculation wall on there, but I took it off because I would rather like show the actual facts of it, and you know, we'll kind of go from there, I guess. But yeah, so it's a fun project. A few things involved with it. You know, I point out a whole bunch of possible missions. I think I have a total of like 25 missions on there that on top of the 7 that we know about, kind of. I point out a bunch of locations on there. There's a bunch of really cool spots in the map, some really iconic ones, and then some that I wasn't aware of until I was just kind of cruising around the map looking at it. The possible incursions and stuff is an interesting one. I think that we'll see things like the Pentagon probably end up being some kind of incursion, and maybe even some other areas. It's interesting. I don't know if like the Capitol is going to be a final mission, kind of like General Assembly, or if it may end up being like the first incursion. I'm not sure. It would make sense because it's a very large structure broken up into different areas. You could kind of do something similar to what they did with Stolen Signal. Hopefully much more grand, much more interesting, much more fun, and much more rewarding. But yeah, it's cool. It's a fun project. The last thing is the map expansions. So when I was kind of peeking around, it looks like there's areas, just from looking at the map, they could definitely expand east and south. There's some pretty relevant stuff in both of those directions. Even to the north, there's the downtown of Washington, D.C., more the city district. That's another area they could go. But they could for sure go west. and the West is very intriguing, and that actually goes into, I believe, the going towards like Arlington and stuff, because you've got the Pentagon in that direction. You've also got you got Fort Myer. You have a lot of military emplacements and stuff like that very near. There's a lot of cool areas just across the Potomac River, and I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with that. I think it could be super cool, and I really can't wait to keep working on this project, and I really can't wait to hopefully work with a bunch of you guys to figure out things that could go on it or that will be on it when we find out more. The last thing we're going to do here is actually a listener question, and it comes from Feffalump. And if you know who Feffalump is, good for you. If you don't, maybe try to find out, but I'll leave that up to you. Their question was, what feature from a different game or genre would you like to see incorporated in Division 2? So my main idea would be to actually have a suppression system similar to what's in Battlefield. Now, for anyone who's played Battlefield and is listening to this, I know that there will be some cringe from that. The Battlefield suppression system has been a subject of a lot of debate in that game, in both ways that it's been implemented well and not so much. The thing I like about it is that from an RPG standpoint, it offers a really cool possibility for stats and things like that. You could build a character into providing more suppression or faster suppression. You could build a character that resists suppression. But what it would do is, I think there's a lot of people who are worried about the game turning into people sitting across the street from each other, hiding behind cover and not killing anything. And a suppression system put into the PvP could alleviate some of that concern, in the sense that if being able to suppress the enemy team, then you can move up, and the suppression may mean things like a blurred screen, decreased accuracy, longer reloading times, longer armor replacement times. So you're talking about all of that kind of stuff that I honestly think could be really, really cool, and really add to the game and the experience, and make the more cover-based game have some ability to not feel like you're forced into cover all the time. That you could be a character that suppresses, that allows your other teammates who maybe have a lot more health, or kind of like a tank, to push up on enemies and cover. Or if there's enemies who are approaching on you, you can suppress them and force them into cover. It's a mechanic I think would be really cool. When it comes to other genres and stuff like that, I just think that's kind of tough. I think a lot of people came to the Division 2 from pure shooter games, like Call of Duty and things like that. So I think bringing in some of that feel while not losing the RPG part of the Division would be really cool. So bringing in the lower time to kill, which they've talked about, the like the gunplay of Destiny 2. That's a game I've actually started playing a little bit lately. I'm trying to level through it and enjoy it. And I get it. The gunplay in that game is a ton of fun. It's even on a controller. It's a good game, and I really hope they take some ideas and clues from that. Destiny 2 is a game to learn from what to do and what not to do. So that's definitely kind of a two-sided thing. I would say games like Warframe, even though I really just don't like that game as much as I've tried to, bringing that replayability that Warframe has. For me personally, I didn't really find that game to be that replayable, but the hundreds of thousands of people who play it and enjoy it seem to. And I think that while I wouldn't want them to copy it exactly, because I don't really care for that game that much, I think just taking some of the ideas and concepts would be really cool in Division 2. The the final thing for me was actually talking a little bit about the RPG I had the most experience with before Division was actually Fallout. Now that's a very, very different RPG from Division in almost every way. But one thing that the Division 1 did that I really liked was something that I love from the Fallout games, which is environmental storytelling. So when you walk into a house in Fallout, there's a pretty good chance if you look close enough, there's a story being told almost everywhere you are. Whether it's a car wreck and then bodies laying, you know, like they got ejected out of the window. There's some really disturbing scenes you come upon. There's some funny scenes you come upon. And there's some really sad ones that you'll come upon sometimes. So that's definitely probably like the last thing. That may be a question I actually revisit as I think about it more. But it's one I really like. And I do appreciate old Pfeffalump for throwing the question out there. That's what I have for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't currently have any more guests lined up. I suspect the next couple weeks will probably just be me, but I will work on trying to line up some stuff. I've got a few ideas. I just need to... I've got lots of ideas. I've got lots of projects. I'm trying to focus on the stream, the podcast, and some other smaller things, while also working on things like Words with Bond in the background. So be patient with me. I'm doing my best. I really appreciate all the support lately. My average viewers on Twitch is about twice what it was probably a month or two ago. You know, we're still only about halfway to get into the partner push, but that's fine. I didn't really even plan on that until next year anyways. But it's not like I'm not still trying to grow. We're getting close to 2,000 followers on Twitch and Twitter. The map that I'm working on already has over 1,000 views on it, which is crazy. I really appreciate all the support. I can't wait to keep doing this stuff with you all. That said, if you have any questions for the EchoCast or any topics you want to hear, check out the Discord. There should be a link for that below. There is also a room in the Discord specifically to talk about the Division 2 map I'm working on, along with a link to the map. The link to the map should also be somewhere where you're viewing or listening to this podcast. If you want to check out the EchoCast on other platforms than what you're hearing it now, it's on Anchor, iTunes, and SoundCloud. I also post it on YouTube. If you want to find me on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch, I am Bond Diesel. If you want to find me on Instagram, I am BondDiesel_Twitch. That's what I have for you this week. This was Bond Diesel, and until next time.